Welcome back, folks. So we finished with the first chapter last time, and we are going to start with the second chapter. I already have a recital in Sanskrit that I recorded, which I will be posting. There are many such available, and you can feel free to choose, select the one that you find you are more used to. If you are used to listening to somebody's recitals, or you can follow the one that I have done. Now, this chapter is going to take a while, and just like we had a pretty long background before we started the Gita, this chapter, if not the most profound, it is one of the most profound chapters in the Bhagavad Gita. And this this second chapter called Sankhya Yoga, there are actually few people call it by some other names as well. But this chapter is is so important that uh, for those who have studied the Bhagavad Gita and talk about it, if you ask them, they will tell you that in the 18 chapters that make up the Bhagavad Gita, if you were asked to pick one chapter that is most important, or that you would rather study than any other, it would be the second chapter. It's also called the summary of the Bhagavad Gita. Uh, there are some interesting ways in which the Bhagavad Gita has been split, and I will mention that sometime later. There is a something Mahavakya called as Tattvamasi, and the Bhagavad Gita is roughly, there is someone has done this mapping that it is roughly mapping uh, to this Mahavakya. So there is a division, 18 chapters divided into three. So there's six chapter each that are associated with this, and it doesn't go sequentially like tat twamasi. It actually goes tvam tatasi in terms of the mapping. But the point is that this specific chapter, the second chapter, Sankhya Yoga, is one of the most important chapters that you will study in the Bhagavad Gita. And if you want to by heart something from the Gita, then it will be something you would want to by heart something. If not the whole chapter, that would be great. But if not that, then there'll be pieces in here, there are shlokas in here that you would want to by heart. So it is going to need a lot of Advaita Vedanta background. We are going to spend some amount of time trying to understand the significance of the Advaita Vedanta, because the way these Vedantic topics come up in the study of this particular um, adhyaya, this particular chapter, uh, we may not uh, we may not have enough time, because we might, if we spend too much time in going back to these concepts, and there might be some break in the flow. So we are going to take these advanced relative to what we are studying concepts in for the second chapter in Vedanta upfront. So for that, I have prepared those slides accordingly to that, according to that context, or keeping that context in mind. And since we recorded the recital, this particular session is going to be a relatively short one. I might spend maybe a half an hour or less on this session on that, and let us see how much we can cover. So let me go to the next slide. Now, there has been an effort by science, by religion, to find out what is the core thing that has given birth to this universe? Is there something like that? Is there a core principle that holds together this entire universe, this cosmos, this creation? And can we get close to it? Can we know it? Is it even possible to know it? And in its effort, science did uh, come quite close to this. And the more they are figuring out, the more science figures out uh, these basic building blocks that make up the universe, the more they stumble upon uncertainties. And we'll see why that is an important consideration when we look at what the rishis of olden times, what they came up with, and what the spiritual giant or the genius that the person that was there in the person of Shankaracharya, what he has to comment on some of these things. We will see somewhat of those, not too much. But from a scientific perspective, the world that we live in comprises the one of the latest things that has come to light is basically matter and energy. And not only that, but they are uh, they can go bit, they're like form of each other. And this is an important concept in Vedanta: form, name and form, nama and rupa. This is an important concept in Vedanta, and you can see that the scientific inquiry into this very same principle, both the religion and science have tried to understand this. They come very close to some of these notions that both of them try to grapple with, try to answer, find answers. So when science tried to embark on this journey or delve or plunge into this exercise, there were two things that it looked at, and you will find that in religion too. There is a theoretical aspect of it, that you think how something might be happening or would have happened. And then on that basis, you come up with a some kind of a mathematical or a pattern or some kind of a repeatability that you can explain. You come up with some kind of a procedure to this to explain this thought process that you have come up with. And in science, obviously that language is mathematics. And in a religion, there is this distinction between these two aspects. In physics, we have got theoretical physicist and experimental physicist. So in religion, there is philosophies, there are philosophers, and there are mystics. Those are the people who experience things. And philosophers are people who will come up with these sometimes uh, very almost unreal ideas of how things will happen, but they do have their own way of relating it to day-to-day experiences that we have. And we are going to see a lot of that a little bit down the line. But since uh, the scientific aspect, at least to begin with, it also gets very complicated after a while. So the smallest, everything that we look at, there could be a pen, there could be this computer that I'm working on, or whatever else is a mouse and some plastic box that is there. Whatever, I know, some small piece I can take out. It's not visible here. Anything that you consider, any matter, even this body for that matter, the smallest individual part of matter was thought, well, it, as you can see in this slide over here, matter is made up of molecules of wood, paper, cloth, pick whatever you want. It is made up of molecules. That's like getting going one lever one level lower. And then after that, you see what that is made up of. And that is made up of atoms. And there was a time when the world that was then thought that this was it. We now know what this smallest part of matter is, and it was atomus, which is atom, which is the smallest in Latin. It is the smallest indestructible part. And then the, the structure of an atom was analyzed, and it was found to have a nucleus with electrons revolving around it. Now, what science, while it was doing this, did not explicitly spell out, which Vedanta does an extremely good job in explicitly spelling out, is that this is a relationship of cause and effect. So what you look at a paper, you look at a wooden block, you look at a pen, whatever it is, and that you interact with and in your on a daily basis in your day-to-day life, you look at a block of something. That is the effect of a certain cause. And then you drill down because that's what you want to do. You want to find out what is the the main cause, the cause of the cause. You want to try and hit that rock bottom piece of it. So here, as things stands today, as science has evolved for several centuries now, as opposed to religion, especially the the Vedantic texts that are there, they have been around for several thousand years. Compared to that, science as we know, especially modern, what modern physics is, I don't want to digress too much, but physics is generally what Newtonian classical things, gravity, whatnot. And when you come at this level where you've got an atom, which is basically having a nucleus with electrons revolving around it, then this behavior of electrons around the nucleus is, um, you can explain its behavior to a certain degree. And then there comes a point when whatever whatever theories, laws you have got are not able to explain some of the behavior of these electrons that revolve around this nucleus. And then Einstein, Max Planck, these are the people who thought a lot about what is happening, and they found out that there is something called as quantum mechanics, which describes the behavior of the electrons. Nevertheless, not we don't want to get into that, but the point is that that is the beginning, that is the definition of what modern physics is. Modern physics started from there. So that was maybe 150 years ago that all started. So compared to that, Vedanta is several thousands years ago. The Shankaracharya was 2000 years ago, and the master genius that he did not, in a sense, discover things, but he was able to explain a lot of complicated things and tie them together in a nice bow. And some of his explanations, they are such grand revelations. We don't want to get too much into it right now. So we have got this atom, which has got a nucleus, and this nucleus has got electrons going around it. And so now this notion of atom being the smallest indivisible part of nature has been broken down. It was no longer the case. So what was the next thing that was there? So there was the nucleus, and then they were able to break down the nucleus into its constituent parts. So the world of subatomic physics came to birth by the breaking down of this nucleus. So now that there was analysis being done into that side of the world, it again was discovered to be constituted of other things. There's quarks, there's gluons. In fact, we are going to see that too, that just before this universe was created, this is from a scientific perspective, not from a religious perspective, the Big Bang theory, when none of this was there, the solar systems, the nebula, the galaxies, nothing was there. There was just instance of energy in some very small secluded space, and there was this bang that took place. The in the first few nanoseconds that the bang took place, they scientists have term for it called the quark gluon soup. They haven't mentioned it over here, but that was what was there, the very first native things that were there, and then it it went on to blast further, and then they combined, things combined, and there was electrons. I mean, I don't want to get into that thing, but the point is that in this attempt, in this endeavor to discover some basic substratum, some core fundamental thing that is responsible for the creation of this whole things. Everything that we have got could be related to that. In that effort, they always thought, science always thought it had reached a point, and then there was kind of a setback. They came back. Well, looks like there's more to it. And then they found something. And then they again hit something and they said, okay, now we found it. And then there was again a setback, and so on and so forth till today. We might say 150, 200 years. We still don't know what it is. In fact, about 100, well, I guess around the same time frame, there was a bunch of physicists and other scientists who, rather than come up with a, a core component, a core material that would be able to explain this entire universe away, they stumbled upon a very interesting thing, that it will not be possible for science to discover such a particle which could explain things at the same time, at the same instant that it could explain some other phenomena. So they in fact hit this wall, that they figured out that it was not possible. And this is the high, it's an uncertainty, it's called as an uncertainty principle. It's defined in different ways, and there is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, there is Pauli's exclusion principle, and so on. There are many of them. The point is that it is not possible to put your finger on such an object that you would be able to say can explain this entire universe away. And religion too faced that problem. They had their own ways to explain this away. Vedanta did a magnificent job of this. And we are going to see a lot of different ideas and how they are integrated and connected together. So as I was mentioning, that this thought process to this urge of man to know what if there is this thing that can explain everything. In Chandogya Upanishad, there is this, there are several verses, but I have just picked uh, just one of them. There's a question floated in the Upanishads, and that question is a grand question. On the face of it, one might think it is very obvious, but when you think about it, you might wonder, can really somebody think like this? The question is that, tell me that by knowing which I will know all. It almost seems like fantasy, right? It seems like a fantastic thing to ask of anybody, and maybe uh, kids might ask this question when playing around. But if you really think about it, it's a grand question to ask. Tell me that by knowing which I will know all. And this is one of the questions in the Upanishad. And in this Chandogya Upanishad, this the story goes on that there's this boy. He's talking to his father Dalaka, and this Saumya is the kid's name. So this, in English you can say here Saumya. But the reason that I included here is the answer that this goes on for a while, but this answer that has been is the uh, the the vision behind this answer is something fantastic. Just by knowing a single lump of earth, you know all objects made of earth. It looks simplistic, which is what really the previous slide was talking about. Atoms, right? At, that's it's the same question being asked, and they kind of found it. The scientists, they found it. The philosophers and the mystics, they found it in their own way. So this this question, what the not the question, but this sentence over here, it says that if it's a very typical example in Vedanta. If you have got a pot made of clay, then if you have got 100 pots in front of you which are made of clay, and you want to know the constituent part of it, and the statement is saying here that you don't need to go and understand and study each and every 100 of the parts. You just study clay with which this, out of which this pot has been made. And once you study clay, then everything that is made up of clay, you know that. You don't have to go and break every pot. What is the difference? If you have got 100 pots or 1,000 pots made of the same clay, what is the difference? The difference is going to be they might be of a different shape. They might be called by a different name. And this is a very profound teaching of the Vedanta, that there is one core truth, and it is manifest as different in names and forms. And this is such a deep philosophy. It doesn't look like that. When it doesn't sound like that when somebody tells you this, it doesn't sound like that. And we are going to take a very deep look into what all this means. A lot of work has been done on this, or gone into it. Okay, there's one other point that I had to go through. Okay, but let's see. Okay, so now what the previous question and this question, they are related. So the previous statement, this statement, by knowing a single lump of clay, you know all objects made of clay. So here the potter is there. He's taking this clay and he's making pots out of it. Right. So you know this clay, and then whatever is made out of this clay, you're going to know. So you take this picture and then you transpose it on top of this. So, well, in the case of a pot and clay, you can go one step behind and say, it is made up of earth and so on and so forth. You can take your deductive powers inferring power, inference powers, and when go to any length that you want. But if you look at this picture here, the creation, when it started out with a big bang with that energy, whatever we don't, this is that we don't know what it is. It's it's just one of the notions that is there. And the first thing that um, came out of it was this quark gluon plasma. And then there was, this is going in the reverse order. So this basically, it is just the reverse order of this picture that we saw. So when we look at today's things around us, there might be a chair you are sitting in, or you are using a pen, or the food that we eat. You take that and you go backwards and see how it is made up. And this is kind of the same thing, but you are coming from the other direction, right? So this is, it includes you and me and all of us. It includes human beings. So this, there is a mysterious energy that started out this big bang. And in order to find the current status that we are in and to make sense of our current existence, the scientists are trying to figure out how this process began. And it's not easy. Obviously, it's not easy. It's been billions of years since this has happened. But they have certain interesting ways of trying to recreate that moment, at least in some form, when creation started. Now, this is a very touchy topic. Like as religion and science, we are not getting into that. Those who know about it, they know about it. But this burst of energy, which started of this, the process, it, you can very well imagine, you take something and you explode it and things just go, they just spread out, right? And then you take a tomato or something, and you yeah, you take something and you blow out, or you take an egg, you smash it, or you take a tomato and you throw it against a wall, and it explodes, right? It goes and then it stops. It just doesn't keep going on and on and on and on. It just stops. It just maybe a few inches, it will splatter, and then the things drop down, whatever its constituents are. So when this Big Bang took place, the explosion, the things that were ripped out of it and they flung out of which you and me are made and everything else is made. So they kept getting bigger and bigger, and this, the material that flew out of this, it started interacting with this. There's several different kinds of material that flew out of it. There was not just things like atoms, protons, this and that, but they combined together, they formed gases, they formed solid things. Those again uh, somehow collided in each other. There are several stars, nebulas, galaxies, whatnot. We live in one galaxy, the Milky Way. But the thing is that the this expansion, unlike this tomato or this egg, you would think that this energy that made this explosion, it would be having some amount of strength in it, some amount of power in it. And that explosion that it did, can you imagine several million galaxies being thrown out? What kind of energy that source must be having? So whatever it is, it will succumb one day, it will finish whatever it is doing. And what's going to happen then? So what makes us stay on this earth? It's gravity. Gravity is pulling it. What makes the earth go around the sun? It's gravity. Gravity is a very mysterious force, but it is holding things together. And So if this Big Bang, it it threw things out, but at some point they might start coming back together, and it's a different discussion that we don't want to get into. But the point that I do want to bring up here is the this mysterious energy that has propagated all this creation is expanding. Even today, there is enough evidence that it is not stopped. It is still expanding. So the word in Sanskrit used for this mysterious energy is called as Brahman. We are getting over the time now, but I'll just finish this one point. It's called as Brahman. This is a very interesting choice of words that they picked, the Vedantist rishis. Bra, it comes from the root called Bra, and it is very interesting that that word means, it doesn't mean big and great, it means to expand. It means therefore the one who is infinite, ever expanding, is Brahman. That is the word they coined for this, isn't it interesting? It's mind-boggling. They could think of that like this. There's a lot of interesting other thoughts that have gone into this point, but that is the word they picked. And there is a parallel over here. There is this material thing that is going on, and then there's this energy, and even this energy, there is energy that is of a sentient nature and then an insentient nature. But even in the insentient world, what is it that holds the electrons, these quarks, gluons? What drives them to live the way that they do live? Given that the quantum theory has been able to explain why there are jumps in the orbitals, the fact of the matter is that there are several ways to explain a certain phenomenon. Does it need to be exactly like that? What happens is we are somehow able to appreciate the effect of things. Even if we do not know the cause, or even if the way you explain the cause may not be exactly accurate, it doesn't affect us because the effect is what we deal with generally. Okay, so we are way over time now. And thanks for listening to this cast. And we will continue with this from the next time. Thank you. Bye.